Guess where I am right now? Cornfield patch, let's go. Another recap. Let's get in to the analysis of round 7. I was up against this WIM, so Woman International Master from India called Isha Sharma. And we get into this game. I have the white pieces, which is interesting because I have to prepare against every type of opening she plays against e4 with black. And so that was very tricky because she played the French defense, e5, the Sicilian defense, and to my surprise, e4 was met with e5. I was quite prepared here. I go with the Italian with knight f3 and then bishop c4, and she goes knight f6, inviting for a fried liver, but I was not up to date on my theory, so I just decided to close things up with d3, defending e4, and we get a really solid closed Italian. Here I go with c3, which is still theory, a6, to prophylactically place the bishop on a7, and after a4, the bishop goes to a7. I go castles, and then she goes d6. Here I wasn't that sure of what to do with the white pieces, like should I go bishop g5, but then this invites h6 attacking my bishop, bishop back g5, and then after this, like, black has not castled. Like, I played this with black round 4, I believe, and won with the black pieces, so like, I don't want to do that early bishop g5 in my game either. So what should I do? I go with h3 instead. Prophylactic move, taking up the bishop g4 pin, really annoying. My opponent goes h6, kind of preventative, same as me, and this kind of tells me, signals to me, that she's preventing my bishop from going to g5 and going on this rough pin, which means that she's about to castle. And I go bishop e3. Simply because my bishop is looking pretty dull on c1, and I don't know the future of it. Maybe I could do b4, bishop b2. I mean, I'm not seeing a huge future for this guy. Meanwhile, I'm seeing the bishop on a7 being fantastic for black. So I go bishop e3. Eliminate that super powerful dark squared bishop immediately. Oh, it's raining? If it's raining, I'm out. Okay, so bishop e3, bishop e6. Kind of the same concept, although my bishop here is very takeable. Like, if takes takes, I lose a pawn straight up on e4. So knight d2, and then castles. So knight d2 just preparing to take back with a very nice piece. Castles by black, and we go rook e1. Rook e1, a friend of mine who's an FM told me that it wasn't that good, and I agreed with what he said. He said rook e1 is not good because on bishop takes and my planned f takes, my rook does not reap the benefits of this open f file. And so here, it would kind of just be stuck on its own move on e1. Rook e1, not that good of a move. Bishop takes, f takes, and then queen d7 was played. Now, I want to play d4, right? The plan in this position is literally to go d4, get that center in, and even threaten d5 as a surplus of that d4 move. Though, to do that, I can't do it right now because bishop takes, knight takes, my knight is taken off of e4, and then this knight can take the free pawn. So I have to want to go like something like queen c2 to defend, the pawn on e4 here, right? To prepare d4. But here I calculated 15 minutes just to make sure that bishop takes h3, the sacrifice does not work. And in fact, I confirmed after the game and during the game, in my own calculations, that this does not work for black, even though it seems to be compensated rightfully because of rook e2. So yeah, I calculated that for a long time. She finally took, and then I took, and then queen e6. She played these moves very fast. Like, she took 14 minutes for the first 14 moves. I'm having like kind of an angst to play fast as well. And I look a little bit, what does queen e6 do? What's the plan here? And I just acknowledge that the queen wants to get off of the d file so that the rook can come in and then d5 can be played. Though queen e6 actually had ulterior motives, and after playing b4, I realized like, literally 10 seconds after that I had blundered this position. Can you see what black played here? Pause the video to solve the problem, but if you're here for the ride, and so am I just got met with knight takes e4 pretty immediately, overloading my pawn on d3. And essentially, once I were to take back, then queen takes, and black is up a pawn, and these double isolated pawns are really not nice. And then this knight is threatening to take on b4 because of this pin. Now it's raining, so I have to go, but I'm continuing this video very soon. Out of here. Bye-bye, cornfield. And here you think to yourself, okay, I've already messed up in this position, what do I do now? And so I thought for a little bit and finally came up with a resource. You could just leave it at that and, you know, fold your knight back and be a pawn down, or you could try to win that pawn back, and that's what I did here, via something called a desperado. So here, this is what I come up with in this position. I go with b5, and the idea is I attack this knight to inflict a desperado. So after the knight moved, here I took on e5 with knight takes, so now my pawn can take this knight on e4. And so once you take back, by the way, noted, I have taken a pawn on e5, so that when I take back here, this position is completely equal. Although it is equal material, I am completely losing positionally. Though, after takes, this backwards pawn on a4 becomes an overextended pawn on b5. So I overextended pawn on b5, too far from my base. It's hard to defend that type of pawn. Backwards pawn on c3. It's just bad because it can be layered through, let's say via queen c4, just like pressuring down this pawn, and it can't be defended by any other of my pawns. And then the double isolated pawns. So my pawn structure is so bad that black should be able to eventually regain a pawn up in this position. So after taking here on b5, I was completely expecting queen c4. Queen c4 just keeps my pawns detached and just pressures the weaknesses, right? The e4 pawn, the b5 pawn, these pawns fall. That's how you pressure weaknesses in chess. That's how you win small advantages that become big advantages that become wins. She went knight g6, which is kind of an odd move. What is this knight doing? Is this knight gonna attack me? No, it has no entry squares. So literally I think she played knight g6 to defend the e pawn to then threaten queen c4. And I think this is a terrible plan because here you are using a strong piece to defend a weak piece, and all that power is adding to nothing if I don't act on this here. So for me, I didn't understand it. I played c4 because now I can breathe. You can feel it through your screen that I can breathe in this position because my pawns finally connect here, and I don't know, I'm just keeping the queen out at the end of the day. And it's like, I can defend better here. Queen b6 is played super quickly. She actually took 6 seconds to play this. This was the idea of knight g6, I assume. But on queen b6, okay, she is threatening to trade rooks on a1 and then win the e3 pawn with check, right? So I play queen c3, defending the e pawn and also counterattacking this e5 pawn. And so after queen c5, yes, it's kind of like the idea with the queen c4 maneuver, but here I'm just more comfortable. And so after a long turn, I mean, I think I took 17 minutes here. If my memory is good, I come up with a really interesting plan because look, I'm gonna have to try to win this d file if we're thinking strictly strategically, right? I have to earn this d file, but at the same time, if let's say I place my rook here, there are some issues with this because black can forcibly, if queen takes e3 check, so rook takes this forcibly win back this d file, which is super desirable for them. And so here I'm a bit lost. Like, what do I do? So I go with rook ed1 anyways, and after takes, and then rook here, I come up with the idea of king f1. You see, it's always a struggle with the king on g1 in earlier moves. Let's just go back a little bit. This knight f4 plan, it's coming, and it's really, really scary because the knight f4 going on about this pin, and it is threatening things, so I can't let this knight come in. But on knight f4, I had just prepared king f1. And here my king is out of the pin. It takes up the c2 square, so there's no royal fork, there's no nothing. And ultimately, the knight would have to go back eventually. And so we just did reverse move order of this, king f1. And I'm going out of the pin, no knight f4, and look how silly this knight is on g6. So, king f1, and what's the idea of king f1? I want to go to e2 to then take up this file and make this d file basically worthless to my opponent, while I own the a file. I don't want the a file, it's a file I can't give either. let's say like I get out of the A file, and let's say we swap roles, okay? Black gets the A file, I get the D file. The A file is so much more valuable for black because they get rook A3 things with super powerful attacking plans. Notably, this pressure on C4 is now a danger aspect. The E3 pawn is now falling. So I'm on A1 because I don't want you to have A1. You know, I don't want you to have the A file. So on F6 here, which was played by my opponent, I guess, to defend this, and then to play like knight E7, but it's so slow. And so it just lets me seep into my plan of king E2. C6 was played, and I thought a long time about this. I eventually went with queen B3, and the idea, let me just remember, the idea of this was that if you take here, I can do queen takes B5, and there's a good probability that we can trade queens. And then if you go with this, I can go queen D5 with the advantage. Because if you don't trade queens, I win a pawn, I think. No, I don't win a pawn, there's queen. No, I win a pawn, because let's say king here, I win a pawn, and then check, just king F2, and we're doing good, right? But if you take, then suddenly all my problems are gone after e takes D5. And I undouble my pawns. So I'm avoiding, you know, the threat of taking, and I'm counterattacking with some good attacking chances if she does take. So king H7 is played, and I thought this move, when you think really prophylactically, so really deep thought into the endgame, let's think of an endgame here. The king is so far from my king, so that my king can just take the center, let's say in the king endgame, and we'll be first at the buffet. We'll be first to get a plate to eat. And I didn't like the plan of king h7, personally. But yes, the king is getting a little bit weak. Mind you, if queen d7 is played, this is a gut-wrenching blunder because I have c5 check, discovered check on this king, winning a queen. She probably did king h7 to go queen d6 and double down on this d file. The only thing is, I can read this, and it's really a good skill to be able to read your opponent and ask yourself why they did such a subtle move. So I'm looking at queen d6 things, and so my reply rook a2 is literally indicative of the fact that I saw queen d6, because now on queen d6 I have rook d2, and defended by my knight, I'm just so happy to trade off these rooks, right? So knight f8 takes, queen takes, and then I go knight d2. I was anticipating b takes here, but on queen takes it's kind of surprising because you're kind of leaving a backwards pawn, I would say, but it's just like a weak pawn. It's just low in the opponent's zone. It's easy to attack on the open b file, and ultimately it's an interesting move because yes, you're jeopardizing your b7 pawn, but you're also counterattacking my weak e4 pawn. And it kind of startled me that she was willing to put a weakness on the line to attack another weakness of mine. Very interesting. So now I go with knight d2 to defend the 4 pawn. I'm telling you, I did a mistake. I blundered a pawn earlier in this game. I didn't blunder actually. I saved it, but I blundered a pawn on paper. But now, like, I'm not, at this point in the game, I'm looking at everything she's doing because I know she does subtle threats, like little subtle threats, and I'm really defending well. Like, I'm really, like, looking at everything she's trying to do. So, knight e6 is played. Knight e6 is really nice. I mean, like, the knight to g6 was originally a bad move, in my opinion. So I go rook b2, attacking the weakness, as I told you guys. And after knight c5, I go queen b6. And now it starts to get a little frisky. By the way, the mood during the game, you guys, is that Isha Sharma was playing very quickly. Maybe because she was pissed that I saved the pawn, but I think it's just her style. She plays very fast when she understands the game. So she would play very fast. She has 44 minutes after 31 moves, which means she spent only half of her time for the first 30 moves. And I have 12 minutes to make my next 9 moves. So queen b6, it's a really interesting move. It's forcing or really pulling strings to trade queens. And it's really what I'm trying to inflict here. Look, black, if they take, rook takes b6, this pawn is never breathing, and I think I can hold this. Although it would be difficult. But my plan would be rook b5, and try to always put pressure on this. Rook b5, knight b3, maybe trade the weak e4 pawn for the b7 pawn, something like this. So it's not really comfortable for her. She doesn't feel like she has a great advantage when she trades the queens off the board because she has one lesser piece to attack my weaknesses. And my king is in the center in an endgame, and a king in the center in the endgame is very comfortable, is a very good defending piece, and is also a very good helper, a very good attacking piece. So queen c8 is played, and look, we both calculated this. She took almost half her time for this move here, because she was calculating the same thing I was calculating on her turn, and it was the hallucinating rook takes d2. I calculated this for as long as her turn was, which was like 16 minutes. And at the end of my calculations, my conclusion was that this is not that good of a move. Here you're sacrificing the exchange. I cannot take back with the rook because it would deflect my rook off the defense of my queen on b6. So let's say if I take, I just lose a queen. So I have to take back with the king. But okay, what's the follow-up? You just sacrifice material. Is there anything else? There is knight takes e4, so the check is the tempo you need to keep going this attack. Now my king has a lot of places to, a lot of possibilities. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? A lot of them are bad, but I looked at king e1. Why king e1? Because after queen takes c4, once again, this knight taking on e4 is not only another pawn, but discovered attack on c4 as well, right? So it's 2 pawns and a knight for a rook. Is that enough compensation for this sacrifice? Queen takes c4 threatens queen c1 check, and the question here is black good enough to carry out a win from this? And I had concluded no, because of a variation. So I had so many things here. I think I had queen takes b7, and on check, I had king e2, and here check, and it's at least a draw. Wait, no, I didn't have this. I had better. Queen b3! Queen b3 is what I had prepared in this variation. Queen b3. On queen c1, I have king e2. The idea of king e2, of course I missed these 2 lethal moves in my analysis, which win pretty much on the spot. But I had looked at only the follow-ups that were checks. So the only 2 checks here, knight g3, gives knight king f3. And here you have to defend your knight, no more checks, and I'm goldened. And after knight c3, I have king d3, which I was like, yes, we have this. The idea is that black can't do any more checks with their major pieces, but upon recalculating this, in my 3rd time I was calculating this, black has e4 check. Black has e4 check. What do I do now? My king has to go to one of 2 squares. And I finally calculated that after king d4, I am completely 5, and not king c4. King c4 I'm losing. Why? Because black has this awesome combination. Knight d1 discovered check, attacking my rook, and then I had calculated, but I'm fine here. I have rook c2 that defends this and counterattacks this queen. But here black have knight takes d3 fork. Crazy! And now I lose with check. Perfect. And if queen takes, you take the knight. It's so fire. So I was kind of excited for her when I saw king c4. But no, king d4. King d4 here, and if you ever decide to check me, I'm getting your knight. If you check me here or here, I can win your knight with my rook or queen. And here, basically, black is out of checks, which is a very good piece of news for me, because it low-key means that I have an advantage here, and I could muster up and win this endgame. So that's the only thing I had calculated. But, king e1 is not good to this, because after queen b3 check, king here, queen h1. And here I'm like dying. I can't defend this because after king f3, there's f5, and now my king is in a mating net, and queen f1 things with mate on f2 are coming soon. At the end of the day, after knight takes e4, this is still living for the white pieces after the counterintuitive king c1. Giving this with check. Rook c2 is allowed here, and after like check, I have king b2, no more checks, and white is living again. But anyway, she didn't go with this. Queen c8, which is the best move in this position, completely took me by surprise. What is going on? What is she doing? I actually have no clue. What is she doing? I have 9 minutes at this point, and I finally have to play something. And I play like the 3rd best move, but this is really big advantage for black. After rook b5, I'm tripling down on this knight. Because look, if the knight gives in, I have queen takes b7. And so basically I'm forcing queen d7. But here, the engine gives such a cool line that I have to share it with you. I have to, like this is an obligation. Queen takes rook, sacrificing the queen, and after queen takes, rook takes c5. The idea is that the white pieces try to formulate a blockade formation, completely blocking out any counter-attacking chances of the black pieces. It doesn't work. The engine eventually catches on and says it's better for black, but I thought I'd share. So I do queen takes c5 here, giving this knight with check. And what I had seen is that after king f3, my king is in an oasis of joy, and there are no other checks. In fact, my king after queen d1 check goes to g3, queen e1 check, king h2, actually you can't take this, and now you don't have any more checks. And this, or something along these lines, comes too slowly because rook takes b7. And if you're trying to go extra with like some queen f1 things, I have queen a7 winning here. You can't defend g7, and this is completely winning. Black would have to sack the rook with check. If you try rook d2 to try to just mate me on the spot, I have still rook takes b7, queen f1 to try to checkmate me, and now rook takes g7. The only resource, these two moves, the only way to draw and save the game after king takes g7, queen e7 check, king g6, you just go with a bunch of checks like this, and if the king ever goes up, you can go with a nice little checkmate on g4, a little punishment. So here, queen e2 was played, king here, and black has a win. She has a win if she finds it. She has 22 minutes at this point. It's not insanely hard to find this, but it is a patient move to look at. It's just h5. Black is given the illusion that I have some quick counterplay here. But after h5, let's say I just take on b7, black is here so much first because of h4. First of all, the h5, h4 plan is at the same time an attacking plan and a defensive plan, which is what I like to call the everything move, but this would be the everything plan since it's two moves. Because if rook sacks and then queen e7 check, the king is now on g6 and there's no pawn on h6 to really like put this king in a drawing net, right? And the rook is still on d8, so I don't have some back rank checks to just always bother the king. So what do I actually do here? Well, I could do rook b1 to actually try to defend things, which looks like the only move. But here, black can upkeep with, okay, rook d3 would win eventually because of f5 things and just completely tearing apart my structure. But the idea is that if I don't play rook b1, let's say I just counterattack with rook takes b7, h4 is the move here. h4 wins, is the only winning move in this position, and is completely winning on the premises that queen e1 with queen g3 is an idea that I cannot defend because I have no defenders in this position. So why are those two moves played? h5, h4 is literally played to take up the weak g3 square that my two heavy pieces can't defend against. And queen e1, queen g3 is coming with mate. So yeah, I got away with it because she played rook t7 here instead of the checks that didn't work out. At least she didn't play that. So rook t7 defends the pawn and kind of is a defensive move. But here, look, I have 4 minutes at this point. 4 minutes for the next 5 moves until I get bonus 30 minutes time. So queen c8, attacking the b7 pawn, and here she finds the only winning move, which is sick. Like she played so well. f5. f5 is like, she found it in 4 minutes. Kind of goals. That's kind of goals. Shout out to Isha Sharma. f5 is a really nice move. f5 has predestiny to open up my king. That's it. Just to open up my king. And so I'm calculating for 4 minutes, taking up all my time for this here. So 2 minutes left on the clock for me, and I have 4 moves left to make, like in 2 minutes. So I have to play this like a blitz game. So rook d4, the only move, really the best move, the best defensive move to play. Forces a trade, or so you'd think. F takes e4, check, on tempo is played. King takes, my king goes for an adventure. Queen takes g2, check. King takes e5, I calculated all of this. But here black has a win that I missed, and that is super easy to miss. It's so counterintuitive, and it's crazy. I'm here to show you. Queen g5 check. If king goes here, there's queen e7 check, king here, and then queen f6 check, king here, queen e6, and if I go here, there's a rook takes with check. So anytime my king would go on the d file, there's a rook takes with a discovered attack on my queen by placing your queen on e6, which is hard to find as an idea. So if queen g5, let's say I go king d4, there's queen f6, and if I go king c5, this is beautiful. b6 check, which is super easy to miss in calculation. You don't think of pawn checks when you're looking at uniquely queen and rook checks, right? b6 check. Okay, if my king goes here, you have queen b2 check, and I get mated, basically, right? But okay, if I go to b5, I don't get mated as badly because like queen b2, I go king c6, and I save myself. But here, black has like a combination that's like beyond, like super engine-like. Rook a7, only winning move. Rook a7 has per goal to mate my king with rook a5 check, king here, and queen b2 checkmate, forcing mate in 2 moves. How do I defend this, you would ask? The thing is, the rook can never move all along these combinations because I have queen f5 check, the resource to trade off queens. Except for this variation, it doesn't work. Because black has queen takes f5, the surprising move, rook takes, and now my rook is detached from this defense and away from my king, and lets for rook a5 defended from the newly b6 pawn. No. No, and this skewer wins the game. King takes, rook takes, and black wins easily here. Absolutely crazy. I think like just the rook will sack on this pawn, and by that time the king will already be here. Take this pawn, and then this pawn will be good. Like let's say c5. I would just go like king g6, and like this, I would go like for rook f8, something like this here, right? And then this, and then c8 queen, and then you just sack the rook. And then this is completely winning. Right? So that was the win for black. She had to find that. So I go check, and she goes rook e7 instead. King d6, rook f7. She finds good moves. This is still winning for black. Queen g4, only move, and now my time hits. Look, I've had 1 minute. I've had 3 minutes for the past, like, I don't know, like 7 moves to make. So I've been playing these like bullet. Queen b4. My time hits. I have 30 minutes plus on the clock for the rest of the game. Queen g4 is really interesting because, and now she needs to make her 40th move to get more time, and she has 6 minutes at this point. Like she went down from 20 minutes, and now she's at 6 minutes. Queen h2 check was played, and now I have rook e5. I played so well here. You cannot play king c5 because of rook c7 check things, and then it gets a little murky. Like my intuition told me I don't like this, but let's analyze. Let's say king d4, queen d2 check, king e4, and then rook e7. Yeah, this loses. I don't like this. And let's say king here. It looks like my king gets mated. Like just straight up, bro gets mated. b6 check, queen a2, queen a7, and rook b7, and this is mate. Kind of sick. Kind of sick to look at these with you for the first time because I didn't have time to calculate this during the game. So I just go like rook e5. Rook f6 check, king d5, and look, my king is safe. My king is safe. You only have checks with your queen now. Your rook cannot check my king officially. So I just like defend here. Like this is pretty forced. I didn't want to go to c5 because of checking things. I don't want to add a new piece into the attack. And so queen d4, queen c5, and then I find c5, which is really nice. But now I have time to play these and like just triple make sure there's not one trick in sight. And after queen a2, I just go queen c4. And here we repeat moves, and I go queen c4 here for the second time, and I do this. Look at this technique. Right after playing queen c4, I know she wants a draw because she's been miserable here. But the thing is, I offer a draw. I offer a draw here, even though she can repeat one more time and just claim the draw. But I offer the draw after 2-move repetition because it's a psychological pull. Since I'm the lower rated player by 300 points, if I offer the draw to her, she would have to accept a draw from a lower rated opponent in a good looking position, which is counterintuitive. But if she refuses the draw, she can't play this, or she wouldn't play this a third time to repeat moves. 3 times repetition is a draw in chess. She would instead have to play a drawing move, let's say like, I don't know, something like this. And then, after check, I would have queen e4 check, which forces the queen trade. And then I would have a superior position because my king is so up on the board. And I would have like rook here attacking this weak pawn. So I was going on a really big psychological pull here to try to like get her to not take the draw. But here, after moments reflection, she did the wise thing and took a draw, because in this position it is actually a draw. And so yeah, that's how I mustered a draw from a completely ugly looking position earlier in this game. And this is one of my proudest games. It's my second draw against a titled player in this tournament so far. And like, I feel good about that. There's low-key a pig outside of my hotel room. I don't know if you guys can see it. Let me just zoom into the thing, Rev. That's a full-on pig, Rev. That's a full-on pig.